Here's a deeper dive into Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones by James Clear. James Clear begins the book by sharing a deeply personal story of trauma. In high school, he was struck in the face with a baseball bat, suffering severe injuries that led to a medically induced coma. The path to recovery was long and uncertain, filled with setbacks, frustration, and doubt. But it was through building tiny, consistent habits like sleeping well, keeping a tidy space, studying regularly, and gradually increasing his training that he transformed himself. Eventually, he became a college athlete, a top student, and a successful entrepreneur. Clear explains that this transformation wasn't the result of one massive change, but the accumulation of many small habits over time. This personal journey becomes the anchor for his philosophy, that meaningful change doesn't come from radical overhauls, but from small, strategic improvements practiced consistently. Chapter 1: The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits. This chapter introduces the core idea that tiny changes lead to big outcomes when repeated consistently over time. Clear illustrates this concept through the example of the British cycling team, which went from years of failure to dominating global competitions by improving everything they did by just 1%. This idea, what he calls the aggregation of marginal gains, proves that small improvements in habits and systems can lead to remarkable transformation. He emphasizes that while goals set the direction, it's the system of habits that determines progress. Clear compares habits to compound interest. Improvements might be unnoticeable at first, but their effects grow exponentially with time. He introduces the concept of the plateau of latent potential, explaining that success often doesn't come until much later than the effort begins. Most people give up when they don't see quick results, but real change happens when you push through this plateau. The chapter ends by reinforcing that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Chapter 2: How Your Habits Shape Your Identity, and Vice Versa. In this powerful chapter, Clear explores a fundamental truth about habits. They shape who you are, and who you believe you are shapes your habits. He introduces the concept of identity-based habits, which focuses not on outcomes, e.g., losing 20 pounds, or processes, e.g., going to the gym, but on becoming the kind of person who embodies the desired change, e.g., being a healthy person. Clear breaks behavioral change into 3 layers: outcomes, processes, and identity, with identity being the deepest and most transformative. Most people focus on outcomes, but real, lasting change occurs when you shift your self-image. For example, if you view yourself as a writer, you're more likely to write every day, not because you're chasing a goal, but because it's who you are. The key to building lasting habits is to reinforce the identity you want to embody. Each small habit is a vote for the type of person you believe you are becoming. This chapter sets the foundation for why habit change must begin with a change in identity, not just a change in behavior. Chapter 3: How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. Clear introduces the habit loop, a 4-step framework that underlies all habits. Cue, craving, response, reward. This cycle explains how habits are formed and why they stick. The cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. The craving is the motivational force behind it. The response is the actual behavior performed, and the reward is the benefit you gain, which teaches your brain whether to repeat it. He outlines the 4 laws of behavior change, which correspond to each part of the loop. 1. Make it obvious, cue. 2. Make it attractive, craving. 3. Make it easy, response. And 4. Make it satisfying, reward. These laws form the core structure of the book and serve as a toolkit for building good habits and breaking bad ones. Clear's insight here is that habits are not random. They're built through consistent patterns and can be consciously designed or restructured using this model. Chapter 4: The Man Who Didn't Look Right, Make It Obvious. This chapter kicks off the first law of behavior change, make it obvious. by illustrating how much of our behavior happens unconsciously through automatic cues in our environment. Clear tells the story of a paramedic who intuitively noticed something was off in a patient, illustrating how cues can be powerful even without conscious awareness. To make habits more obvious, Clear recommends strategies like the habit scorecard, where you write down your current daily habits and become aware of which ones serve or hinder you. Another tactic is implementation intentions, where you clearly define when and where a habit will happen, I will behavior at time and location. Another is habit stacking, where you attach a new habit to an existing one. After I current habit, I will new habit. These tools help you bring unconscious patterns into conscious view so you can begin to change them deliberately. Clarity and visibility are the first steps to effective habit change. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. Here, Clear deepens the strategy of habit stacking and shows how anchoring new behaviors to existing routines increases your chances of success. This chapter emphasizes the importance of context and consistency, where you do something often matters more than the motivation you feel. He highlights how habits are easier to build when they are tied to a specific time and place. For instance, instead of vaguely stating I want to read more, a better habit would be after I make my morning coffee, I'll read one page of a book. By using routines as a trigger, you eliminate the need for willpower and decision-making. Clear also explains the idea of designing your environment so that the cues for good behavior are easy to see and act upon, while cues for bad behavior are hidden or removed. Environment, not willpower, is the secret weapon behind starting and sustaining habits. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. In this insightful chapter, Clear argues that motivation is not the primary driver of behavior. Environment is. He uses research and examples to show that human behavior is largely shaped by what's immediately visible and accessible. People often blame a lack of willpower for failure, but the truth is that our surroundings have an outsized influence on what we do. For example, if you walk into a kitchen and see a plate of cookies, you'll be tempted, even if you weren't hungry before. Clear introduces the concept of environment design, where you reshape your spaces to promote good habits and reduce friction for healthy behaviors. This could mean putting your gym clothes next to your bed, placing a book on your pillow, or removing junk food from your pantry. The environment acts as an invisible hand, nudging us in certain directions. If you want consistent change, don't rely on fleeting motivation. Build an environment that makes good habits the default. Chapter 7. The secret to self-control. Clear tackles the myth of self-control by showing that the most disciplined people aren't resisting temptations all day. They're avoiding them entirely. He explains that self-control is like a muscle that gets fatigued. The more you rely on it, the more it wears down. Instead of constantly resisting bad habits, the key is to remove the cues that trigger them. If you don't want to eat junk food, don't keep it in the house. If you want to stop scrolling endlessly, log out or delete the app. Clear reinforces that the easiest way to build self-control is to eliminate temptation before it begins. The chapter also discusses how to shape identity-based habits by aligning your environment with the type of person you want to become. In short, self-control is less about willpower and more about strategy and structure. The second law, make it attractive. Chapter 8, how to make a habit irresistible. This chapter begins the second law of habit change, make it attractive. Clear explains that our behaviors are driven by the anticipation of a reward, not the reward itself. This is the power of craving. He introduces the idea of temptation bundling, which pairs a habit you need to do with something you want to do. For example, you can only watch your favorite Netflix show while exercising on the treadmill. He also draws on the neurological science of dopamine, showing how our brains are wired to seek pleasure and anticipate rewards. Making a habit attractive by using rewards, pairing it with enjoyable experiences, or framing it positively can drastically increase your likelihood of following through. In essence, Clear emphasizes that you can train your brain to want habits that are good for you by making them pleasurable and enticing. Chapter 9. The Role of Family and Friends in Shaping Your Habits. Humans are tribal by nature, and our habits are heavily influenced by the social groups we belong to. Clear explains that we tend to imitate the habits of 1, the close, 2, the many, and 3, the powerful. If you're surrounded by family or friends who value fitness, productivity, or mindfulness, you're more likely to adopt those same values. Conversely, if your group normalizes laziness or indulgence, it's much harder to act against the grain. Clear encourages readers to join communities where your desired behavior is the norm, so that it feels natural and expected. By doing so, you make good habits part of your identity and social belonging. The desire to fit in can be a powerful force for lasting change. Social reinforcement, not just internal motivation, helps habits stick. Chapter 10. How to Find and Fix the Causes of Your Bad Habits. This chapter focuses on the importance of identifying the real cause behind your bad habits, not just the surface-level behavior. Clear urges readers to analyze their cravings. What are they really trying to satisfy when they procrastinate, smoke, overeat, or scroll endlessly? Often, bad habits are a misguided attempt to solve a deeper problem: boredom, stress, loneliness, or anxiety. Once you recognize the cue-craving connection, you can reframe your behavior and replace the bad habit with a healthier one that meets the same underlying need. This chapter also emphasizes reprogramming your associations and mental models, showing that many bad habits can be fixed not by resistance, but by restructuring the craving itself. The third law: make it easy. Chapter 11. Walk slowly, but never backward. Clear begins this chapter by challenging the idea that habits require a massive, perfect effort. Instead, he argues that repetition matters more than perfection. Starting small and showing up consistently is far more effective than doing something big once in a while. The key isn't to run a marathon, but to become the kind of person who laces up their running shoes every day. He introduces the 2-minute rule, expanded in Chapter 13, which helps reduce friction and lower the entry barrier to habit formation. Essentially, Clear emphasizes that the most important thing is to get started, because once you're in motion, it's easier to keep going. Rather than waiting for motivation or trying to optimize every detail, he advocates for building momentum through simplicity and consistency. Motion, planning, talking, researching, often masquerades as progress, but action, the habit itself, is what truly matters. Chapter 12. The Law of Least Effort. This chapter explains how we naturally gravitate toward the path of least resistance, which is why building easy systems is essential for habit formation. Clear shows that every habit follows the path that requires the least amount of friction, so the easier a behavior is, the more likely it is to become a habit. The environment plays a key role again here. If you want to read more, put a book on your pillow. If you want to waste less time on your phone, bury distracting apps in folders or delete them. He introduces the concept of prime the environment, meaning that you should design your physical and digital surroundings to make your good habits as convenient as possible and your bad habits as hard as possible. Small environmental shifts can make a dramatic difference by helping your brain choose the easier, better option without conscious effort. Chapter 13. How to Stop Procrastinating by Using the 2-minute Rule. This pivotal chapter expands on a key tactic from the previous ones, the 2-minute rule. Clear explains that any habit can be started in under 2 minutes if it's broken down small enough. Want to become a reader? Start by reading 1 page. Want to get fit? Put on your workout shoes. This approach works because it focuses on mastering the art of showing up, The goal is not to achieve a perfect performance right away, but to make the starting process so easy that it's almost impossible to fail. By doing this, you reinforce your identity as the kind of person who shows up consistently. Once you start, it's much easier to continue. Clear emphasizes that a habit must be established before it can be improved. The 2-minute rule bypasses resistance and lays the foundation for automatic behavior over time. Chapter 14. How to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. This chapter centers around the concept of commitment devices, tools and systems that lock in future behavior and make it easier to stick with your habits. Examples include automatic savings deductions, deleting social media apps, or scheduling gym sessions with a friend. By removing the option to fail, you dramatically improve the likelihood of habit success. Clear uses the term automation to describe how habits can be reinforced through technology and environment. He also discusses the value of reducing choices, as decision fatigue often leads to bad habits. The goal here is to create a system where doing the right thing is the path of least resistance and the wrong thing becomes difficult or impossible. Whether it's by using apps, smart home devices, or accountability structures, making your future decisions easier is a powerful step toward behavior change. The fourth law: make it satisfying. Chapter 15. The cardinal rule of behavior change. This chapter introduces the fourth law of behavior change: make it satisfying. Clear explains that humans are wired to repeat actions that feel immediately rewarding and avoid those that feel unpleasant. That's why bad habits often stick. They offer instant gratification, even if the long-term effects are negative. Good habits, on the other hand, often have delayed rewards, which makes them harder to reinforce. To combat this, Clear suggests building immediate reinforcement into good habits. This might mean checking off a habit tracker, celebrating small wins, or giving yourself a visual cue of success. He emphasizes the power of positive reinforcement and explains that the brain needs some kind of satisfaction to register a habit as worth repeating. If a behavior is pleasurable, it's more likely to be performed again. In short, what is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. Chapter 16. How to stick with good habits every day. In this chapter, Clear addresses the importance of habit tracking as a tool to maintain momentum and consistency. He explains that tracking your habits, whether with a journal, app, calendar, or simple checkmark, serves as a visual reminder of your progress and builds motivation through the satisfaction of not breaking the chain. The act of crossing off a successful day reinforces the habit and provides a sense of accomplishment. However, Clear warns not to let the system become more important than the behavior itself. Tracking is a means to keep focus, not a goal in itself. He also emphasizes the value of never missing twice. Missing a day is acceptable and part of being human, but the key is to quickly bounce back the next day. He introduces the idea that consistency, not perfection, is the secret to lasting habits. Streaks help reinforce your identity and encourage you to keep showing up. Chapter 17. How an accountability partner can change everything. This chapter explores the power of social reinforcement and accountability. While earlier chapters discussed how to align with positive social groups, this chapter focuses on creating specific accountability structures to keep you on track. Clear shares examples of people who commit to their habits through public pledges, contracts, or accountability partners. People who hold them responsible if they deviate from the plan. The threat of social or financial consequences makes bad behavior less appealing. He introduces the idea of a habit contract, a written agreement that outlines what habit you're committing to, the rules, and the consequences for breaking it. These contracts work because they attach immediate consequences to behavior, which the brain responds to more strongly than distant outcomes. Ultimately, we're more likely to follow through when someone else is watching. Advanced tactics: how to go from being merely good to being truly great. Chapter 18. The Truth About Talent, When Genes Matter and When They Don't. Explores the interplay between natural talent, genetics, and the development of habits to achieve success. Clear emphasizes that while innate abilities can provide advantages in certain areas, the consistent application of small habits is far more critical for long-term achievement. Below is a summary of the key points from this chapter. The myth of talent as the sole determinant of success. Clear challenges the idea that success is primarily driven by natural talent or genetic advantages. While talent can give you a head start in specific domains, e.g., height in basketball or speed in sprinting, it's not enough on its own. Success depends on aligning your habits with areas where you have a natural inclination or advantage, then consistently refining those skills through deliberate practice. The importance of choosing the right field. Clear introduces the concept of playing the game that favors your strengths. He suggests that you're more likely to excel in areas where your natural abilities align with the demands of the task. For example, if you're naturally outgoing, you might thrive in roles requiring social interaction, like sales or public speaking. Conversely, if you're analytical, you might excel in data-driven fields. The key is to select a field or habit that suits your personality and strengths, as this makes it easier to stick with the habit and improve over time. Genes don't determine destiny. While genetics play a role in your potential, e.g., physical traits like height or cognitive predispositions, they don't dictate outcomes. Clear argues that your habits and environment can amplify or diminish the impact of your genes. He uses the example of Michael Phelps, whose physical attributes, long arms, large lung capacity, gave him an edge in swimming. However, Phelps' success came from years of disciplined training and habits, not just his genetics. The power of self-awareness. Clear emphasizes the importance of self-awareness in choosing habits that align with your natural tendencies. By understanding your strengths and weaknesses, you can focus on habits that feel more natural and sustainable. He suggests asking yourself questions like, what feels fun to me but work to others? Or where do I achieve above-average results with relative ease? These questions help identify areas where you're likely to excel with less effort. Work hard on what comes easy. The chapter highlights a paradox. The most successful people often work hard at things that feel relatively easy to them. This is because they've chosen fields or habits that align with their natural strengths, making the work enjoyable and sustainable. For example, a naturally curious person might find it easier to build a habit of reading or researching, which can lead to expertise in their field over time. The role of habits in outpacing talent. Clear argues that consistent small habits can outperform raw talent over time. Someone with less natural ability but better habits will often surpass a more talented individual who lacks discipline. He reinforces the book's core idea: small incremental improvements, the 1% better rule compound over time, leading to remarkable results regardless of starting talent. Practical application. To apply the lessons from this chapter, Clear suggests: experiment with different fields or habits to discover where your strengths lie. Focus on areas where you have an edge or find joy in the process, as this increases the likelihood of sticking with the habit. Build systems of small habits that align with your goals and natural inclinations, rather than relying solely on willpower or hoping for talent to carry you through. Chapter 19. How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work. Title: The Goldilocks Rule. How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work. Key points. The Goldilocks Rule. Humans are most motivated when working on tasks that are at the right level of difficulty. Not too easy, not too hard, but just right. This sweet spot lies at the edge of your current abilities, where the task stretches you but is still achievable. Flow state. Clear connects the Goldilocks rule to the concept of flow, a state of deep focus and enjoyment, when you're fully immersed in a task. Tasks that align with the Goldilocks rule are more likely to induce flow, making habits feel rewarding. Sustaining motivation. To stay motivated, choose habits and goals that keep you challenged but not overwhelmed. For example, if you're learning a new skill, incrementally increase the difficulty to maintain engagement. Avoiding boredom and frustration. If a habit becomes too easy, you'll get bored and lose interest. If it's too hard, you'll feel frustrated and give up. Regularly adjust the difficulty to stay in the just right zone. Practical application. Break tasks into manageable steps that push your limits slightly. Vary your approach to keep habits fresh, e.g., try new exercises in a workout routine. Track progress to see how far you've come, which boosts motivation. The Goldilocks rule emphasizes that sustained motivation comes from working on tasks that are appropriately challenging. By designing habits that keep you at the edge of your abilities, you can stay engaged and make consistent progress. Chapter 20. The Downside of Creating Good Habits. Title: The Downside of Creating Good Habits. Key points. The paradox of success. Good habits can lead to success, but they can also create complacency or rigidity. Once you master a habit, you may stop improving or become overly attached to your current methods. The risk of autopilot. Habits automate behavior, which is efficient but can lead to mindless repetition. Without reflection, you might miss opportunities to optimize or adapt. Plateaus and continuous improvement. Clear warns that progress often plateaus after initial gains. To avoid stagnation, you must periodically review and refine your habits. Balancing consistency and flexibility. Stay consistent with core habits, but remain open to experimenting with new approaches. Elite performers, e.g., athletes, artists, combine disciplined habits with deliberate tweaks to keep improving. Reflection and review. Clear advocates for regular self-assessment to ensure your habits align with your goals. He suggests systems like annual reviews or journaling to evaluate what's working and what needs adjustment. Avoiding identity traps. Being too rigid about your habits, e.g., I'm a runner so I must run daily, can limit growth. Embrace a flexible identity that allows for evolution. Practical application. Schedule time to reflect on your habits, e.g., weekly or monthly reviews. Experiment with small changes to optimize your systems. Focus on long-term growth by embracing setbacks as opportunities to learn. While good habits are powerful, they can lead to complacency or stagnation if not managed. To sustain growth, balance consistency with periodic reflection and adaptation, ensuring your habits evolve with your goals.